Hello, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connect. Each of us has stories that help us to understand and to explain our world. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who have had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who have had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories that help us to better understand our world. And they help us to connect with each other. And Community Connections is about those people and about their stories. And I'm sure that you will enjoy meeting these amazing, amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and today's guest is somewhat of a legend in our community. She's a legend as a realtor. She's a legend as an occasional photographer, as one of the founders of our community's polar bear swim. And long ago, she even was my babysitter, according to my parents and her. I don't remember that very well. And she is a positive, congenial woman with a wonderful smile. Welcome, Denise Stevenson.
Well, that was cool. Actually, my biggest part of my life emotionally is I was a VGH grad, so I was a nurse before, and I worked in the White Rock District Hospital before it was called Peace Arch with your dad. So, all right, so that's kind of interesting. Today I was walking my puppy on the train track, as we used to call it, on the promenade. And I walked past, I was doing West Beach, and I walked past a little house that used to be Jackie Dickens' mom and dad's restaurant. And I used to deliver papers to them, the Vancouver Sun. So that was one of the things I thought that you might find interesting.
Very interesting.
So Jackie Dickens' mom and dad, oh my goodness, I can remember them. All right, so walking along that West Beach, there was a Mrs. Mitchell and a Miss Chandler who were sisters. Do you know anything about this yourself, Gordy?
Well, I remember Julie Mitchell, who lived down in East Beach, and her parents right on Marine Drive.
All right, that is an entirely different Mitchell.
Oh, is it?
So when our house burned down in 1941, the Lemieux house, the Mrs. Mitchell and Miss Chandler lived in the house. Tom Kirstein lives on the property where one was, and there were two houses similarly built. One was brown and one was white. Mrs. Mitchell was a school teacher. They were both school teachers out at Halls Prairie School, and I went to grade 1 between March and June at Halls Prairie with Mrs. Mitchell, Miss Chandler. Right, so that's something so that's 1943 or 44, I guess.
Where were you born, Denise?
1937.
Were you born at Royal Columbian?
I was born at VGH, and mom and dad moved out in 1941 so and that would have been, and I was 5. I was 4 and 5 when I was in grade 1, because I turned 5 in April. So I was a year ahead of myself in school. All right, so we were brought up in the corner of Foster and Prospect on what was referred to as 3/5 of an acre. And our neighbors were Robbie Robertson, who had Robertson's Taxi, and the McLeans, Shannon, Helen Louise, and Dorothy McLean were on Prospect. Mr. Stark, who had something to do with the original White Rock Sun. You might know more about that than I do from your knowledge with Vin. Mr. Stark lived there, and Mr. and Mrs. Potter lived on the corner of Foster and Roper with a big garden. So I don't know if there's anybody who's listening to this would know anything about any of them. Probably not. Let's see.
Your father and family was a bit of a legend too.
Okay.
Your dad. You talk a little bit about your dad and
My dad was a bon vivant, a Frenchman, loved life. Started out driving to Vancouver. When the family moved in 1941, he had a little Austin, I think. And he would drive into Vancouver to work every day. And then they bought a store on Washington Avenue, Marine Drive. It was a hardware store. And he sold hardware and oil for oil stoves and glass. And that building is still there. I think there's a music, a restaurant where there's some music played there now. I wish I knew the name of it, but I don't. Then Dad and Mom built the house on corner of Foster and Prospect, and it was a prefab house with 4 bedrooms. Started out 3 bedrooms, and then Dad did an addition for each one of the 4 children. So we all had our own bedroom, and we also had our own bathroom. So that was really early to have a children's bathroom. And then when I was 10 years old, won a Halloween prize for the best costume. And that prize was a sparkler. So I was hiding the sparkler from my little sister. And it got hidden really well and burned the house down, was the full outcome of that. Fire trucks that were at the corner of Buena Vista and Oxford. One of them couldn't make it up Buena Vista Hill. It was November the 8th, 1947. And so the other one went around State Road and got there, but there wasn't a lot of water. It was the pumper truck that didn't have enough water to quell the fire. In order to reach the fire department, Mom went down to Taylor's Taxi. Their house was at the corner of Prospect and Martin. Used their phone because, of course, we didn't have phones then. And so that's how they got in touch with the fire department. One thing I can say is that my parents never made me feel guilty or never caused a huge emotional impact psychologically on me. The way they handled it, I thought was beautiful. I hope that I handled issues like that with my family as well. Fortunately, none of my kids burned the house down, so I didn't have to test myself on that. What else would you think I was a girl guide. Oh, my mom.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, my mom was a nurse. And when the going got rough after I burned the house down, Mom had to go back to work. She'd been an at-home mom with 4 children. So she worked at Mrs. Silk's Hospital on Kerfoot Road, and then worked in Chilliwack at Sardis at the Cocolitza TB Hospital. And then I became the mom, which the younger siblings weren't all that thrilled about. And Mom went on to be a nurse, the maternity nurse at our new White Rock Hospital. And that was kind of 1958, I think. 1957, 58?
Yeah, 55, 56, I'm there now.
Oh, okay. And then, let's see. Yeah, so Mom was there until she retired Yeah. Um,
So what would the population have been in the community around that time? Was
I
it
have no idea.
1,200 or something? It wasn't 2,000 maybe, and certainly now it has grown gigantically. So you've seen a lot of changes.
Well, I actually live in a high rise overlooking the area that I was brought up in. Could actually see the rooftop of that apartment block my dad built. Yeah, it's quite, if mom and dad and or Ralph could come back right now and see it, wouldn't it just be, it would just be amazing to watch the reactions.
Wouldn't believe it, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, now Girl Guides. I was in Girl Guides, and that brings in the Ortners. Do you remember the Ortners? Do you?
The name, yeah.
Okay. There was also, there was a mink farm on Thrift Avenue, Mr. Nickel. I used to walk up from Prospect through the bushes to Thrift, eating huckleberries on the way, to get to the mink farm, where I would help Mr. Nickel feed his mink. And one day, that's how I learned that upset mama mink eat their baby minks. And so I was pretty young when I learned that. I thought it was kind of ghoulish.
Was that a time when Mr. Whipple was just down the road from there too?
Oh yeah, Mr. Whipple. That's right, Mr. and Mrs. Whipple
Yeah.
lived down Thrift, and so did the Thrifts
Thrifts and the Darlings lived in there.
and the Darlings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
And,
Darlings
and Mr. Whipple was a Boy Scout leader too.
was, and Mark was an avid Boy Scout.
And they raised rabbits, I remember.
And Mark, that will be why Mark brought home rabbits and had his own little rabbit. And your dad came because Mark, we got bitten. One of us got bitten by a rabbit, and your dad came to the house. Mom and dad weren't there, but I phoned your dad. And being the oldest sister, I was probably 11 or something. Your dad came as a doctor and looked at what the problem was. What else? We had a horse on the corner of Foster and Prospect. Trigger, his name was Trigger. Yeah, so as the four Lemieux children took swimming lessons, well, Connie Matheson taught lessons beside the pier for 5 cents a lesson. And then all four Lemieux took swimming lessons. All four Lemieux competed. And we competed with each other, and we competed against Crescent Beach. I don't know what else is interesting. What else can you think of?
Well, you could talk a little bit about Ralph and how you started the polar bear swim. And
oh yeah, Ralph. So Ralph and I was in nurses training. I met Ralph in grade 11. We started being boyfriend and girlfriend in grade 12. I went to grade 13 here in White Rock, and Mr. Sanford was principal. Ralph, I went into training, and Ralph would drive in once a week. And then in the, in the middle of grade 12, the Super Value opened in White Rock, and Ralph quit school in the middle of grade 12 to take on the job as assistant manager. And then he very quickly became the manager and was the youngest Super Value manager in British Columbia. Super Values were quite, there were a lot of Super Values around. Now it's mostly Safeways and Save-Ons. So we got married in 1957. And Ralph was a Super Value manager for 20 years. Our wedding was a secret because you were not allowed to be married while you were in training. And so we were married by Pitt Griffiths, Reverend Pitt Griffiths, in the Anglican Church at Halls Prairie. And then Vin Coyne wrote it up on the front page of the Peace Arch News in 1958 when I graduated from nursing. I worked at the White Rock District Hospital. It was called the Peace Arch District. No, it was the White Rock District Hospital when I was there. And I worked there until we had our first baby, Karen. And I must say that while I was on nights, that was when the hospital changed names from Peace Arch, from White Rock District Hospital to the Peace Arch District Hospital, or Peace Arch Hospital. And we actually had to write it on the tops of the charts. It was a much longer writing on each page for each. Oh, there's another, Mrs. Atkinson. Mrs. Atkinson, whose children were, well, there was Les and what were the other children's names?
It was John Atkinson was the father.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was Les and Rosemary, and there's another Atkinson boy. Anyhow, Mrs. Atkinson was on nights with me when that change took place. Then Ralph left real estate or left SuperValue to join me, because by this time I was selling real estate, and he joined me a couple of years later, and did so till he retired. I think 1955. I retired 1998, and there we go. I don't know that there's much more.
Well, as I remember the story of you were, I think, at Terra Supper Club for New Year's Eve, and isn't that how you sort of rolled into me starting the Polar Bear Swim for our community?
Oh, okay, the Polar Bear Swim. So we were at on the King George Highway, but closer to 24th Avenue. The Purple Monkey.
Purple Monkey, yeah.
Purple Monkey. Rod Kerr,
yeah,
and Claire Breen were at a different group at the Purple Monkey, and Ralph and I don't remember what group we were with, but because we were both White Rock Amateur Swimming Association people, we started talking together, and Rod and Claire said, "We're gonna go swimming tomorrow at Polar Bear Club." And I said, "I'm coming too." And so with that, there were 5 of us that went. So that there was Pam Skaken, like Mrs. Skaken, and her daughter, Pam, who was just a, I don't know, 11 or 12-year-old youngster. It was off the end of the pier. That was the first time. And then it evolved. The next year, Robin Miller joined, and I don't remember who else, but but that all happened on New Year's Eve when everybody was imbibing. This is where the idea came up, and of course the next morning nobody could get out of it.
and now I think this year would have been the 50th.
Would it have been
50th year? I think.
Okay.
I think you were the official starter of it 2 years ago, and I think that was the 48th.
So okay, so we lived on Oxenham at that time, and Rod Kerr lived on Oxenham, and the Breeds probably lived at that point on Highview, but they originally lived in. The Breens originally lived at the corner of Thrift,
Roper,
Merklin.
They were on Roper, weren't they? Roper, and remember their house?
Right on the corner.
Yeah.
Across from the guy with the fish, the goldfish.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
So that was Roper. You're right. It's Roper. And yeah, what's next to the school?
Best, is it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. When you went swimming back at for the polar bear swim. Was the tank there at that time?
Yes,
So the
yes.
tanks.
And that's why the women were afraid their men would have heart attacks. And so that's why Carolyn and Dixie thought, if the men have heart attacks, they're going to sink. So the next year it was held down on the beach.
Okay.
So that was done for safety's sake.
And years after that, they used to take the tank and move it to Blaine during the winter. So it was only stayed, the tank was over there.
To Blaine or to, yeah, okay, all right.
They took it.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that. And I think that I attended the 100th anniversary of the White Rock Amateur Swim Association about 2 years ago.
Really?
So
With Mrs. Vidal, I think, was one of the starters.
Annie Vidal, that's right, yeah. And Merle McGrath was one of the,
Yeah.
down at the beach running it all the time there.
She was my coach when I was taking swimming lessons. She was my teacher when I was taking swimming lessons. And Granny Vidal, I think Mark, Alex, and Guy all got the what were they, Granny Vidal medal for swimming the 25 yards of the tank. I was too old. You had to be 6 and under.
And so, and there was always the big competition with Crescent Beach Swim Club.
Yes, yes. I think I managed to come in third with diving, which was not the crawl was my strength. But yes, there were some good swimmers at Crescent Beach.
During the summer, it seemed like the population of the community grew dramatically. And I remember somebody telling me that in the winter, you knew everybody. And in the summer, if you saw somebody you didn't recognize, you said hi to them and where are you from?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah. And when I was delivering papers, there used to be the little auto court where the boat launch is at West Beach.
Yeah.
And there was where the park is now, there was an auto court, and those people that would come, I would deliver papers to them. Sometimes at the end of the week, they'd be gone and I wouldn't
It's
be
9
paid.
o'clock.
So we've been half an hour now, by the way. And there was oh dear. I have a painting I did that is showing that particular area. I did only one oil painting in my whole life. It was on an art course. And it's probably going to end up in the museum because it shows the grocery store that was across.
was that Caldecott Village?
No, that's up on that was an auto court that was a corner of north of Nickel. And
yeah, because there was the one right down at the foot of right across, and there weren't there little sort of cabins on the south side of Marine Drive there too?
Yes, that's what's in the painting, and that's what I was referring to as the auto court. And that's that I used to, those cabins were rented through the summer.
Yeah. And
that's where I delivered papers. And then there was a fourplex to the side of that too. And then across the street from that was a grocery store, and that sold fish and chips as well.
That's right, yeah.
And, yeah, Dupre Street. The Dupre's were there. They were alive while I was there.
So, we've seen dramatic changes in this community. What do you see as the future of the community? What do you think it's going to look like in another 50 years, or how do you see the growth happening? And
I see lots more high rises. People keep having babies. This is a very nice climate in which to live. The visual, like where I live right now, I can see Mount Baker and I can see Active Pass. Yeah. It's just amazing to live here. So people all through the years, while there's been recessions, etc., our properties just kept selling. They would lose value occasionally, but they always come back because it is a nice area to live in. So I foresee more high rises unless people quit multiplying. What's going to happen?
Yeah, yeah, I think that I certainly agree with. I think we live in probably the best part of maybe the best province of maybe the best country in the world. I think we're
Yeah.
pretty blessed and fortunate to be here. And there are so many wonderful things here. Just to, as
Yep.
you be able to live across and look at the bay, you can see the United States, and as you say, the pier, the tracks. It's just a unique place.
It is. It's beautiful. It's lovely.
So when your parents decided to move here, was that what made them decide that?
I'm not sure, but my brother Mark was severely burned with sulfuric acid, and he nearly died. Mom, being a nurse, was with him all the time. It was before antibiotics, and his face was severely burned, and he had 3 skin grafts. And I think getting out of the city and into their own, I'm not really sure, but I do know there was something there. And for Dad to drive into Vancouver, it was a 2 hours to get there.
Yeah.
A lot of gravel roads. I mean, the King George Highway, I think it was cement in places. I know it was not cement when I was growing up. It was, so I don't know.
So that would have been a drive for those who have been around not that long. You'd have to go through over the Patella Bridge and down
Yep.
Kingsway, and it was a very long
Yes.
drive, not like it is today with a tunnel and
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
bridges.
The tunnel didn't come in till I was in training.
Yeah.
I mean, till after I was in training, because Ralph when he came in to visit me at the residence at VGH, he had to come Patella Bridge and Kingsway and Broadway, and yeah.
Well, you've had a remarkable story to tell us about the community, and you're looking wonderful and sounding great. And I was talking to Vin Coyne this evening earlier on, and he did say hi to you and wish you well.
Oh my goodness. He has been part of our lives right from the get-go, because he was Ralph's box boy for a while. He must have told you that, did he?
Yeah. And he was my first Little League coach. He and Jack Dickens
Oh my gosh.
coached Little League with him. So there are all kinds of wonderful connections that are made. And
Ralph and I did have 2 children. I didn't mention the fact that we have 2 children, and my children are now 60 and 61 years old. And I have become the great grandmother of 6.
Oh, wonderful.
The grandmother of 4. So yeah, it's been a full life here in White Rock.
And there's lots more to it. And now that you're part of a strata council again and being able to in some ways shape what the building will be like and what living will be like within that building. Governance isn't always that easy, is it?
That's right. Or have you had any experience there, young man? Have you had any experience there at all?
On occasion, I've tested some of that along the way, and
it doesn't matter how hard you try, you cannot please everybody.
No. I remember Lauren Ginther once telling me that there are 2 ways to say no. One is to actually say no, and the other is just to make it so difficult that it can't happen anyway. And he felt so often that's what was happening on council, that people would make those decisions rather than being so honest to say no and rather go. So it was interesting to be able to learn from he and Vin and so many people on council. So any parting words you have for listeners and people who may be looking at this 50 years from now, or even 20 years from now, and wanting to know about what it was like?
I think that just if anybody were to be able to come back and see the flow, the speed of the flow would be of increased residences, decrease of wild areas would absolutely, they just wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But
that's an amazing difference we've seen over the time that we've been here. So Denise, thank you so very much for telling us about the history and for talking about the waterfront and walking along there, and for being bold enough to get up the next morning when it might have been a little more difficult, and starting the polar bear swim as well, which has now been in existence for 50 years. You really started something, which I guess sometimes when you're at the Purple Monkey, you get inspired late at night, and maybe that was one of the inspirations that came out of it. You've made many, many wonderful contributions to our community, and thank you so very much for being a guest on Community Connections. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.